That's right. Additional minutes. I love that. So I'm not sure if they're closing the doors or, if we're good to go. Thank you, Ricky. I guess that's who that was waving at me. You're right. You just can't see people. So when you guys have questions, wave your arms really big and stand up and go, "Hey, you, shut up," because we'll never see you, perhaps. But I'm Bobbi Harris. I'm the executive director of the Utility Broadband Alliance, and it's just my pleasure to get to lead this little fireside chat here. When we talk about communication strategies and they're no longer optional, you can, just from that sentence, you wouldn't have any idea what we're talking about today. As a matter of fact, when we first started talking, we thought, what are we going to talk about today? But communication strategies, when you're thinking about the end user and some of the things that have changed, even the word end user is a little different. So you're going to hear some examples from one-to-one conversations to the end consumer residents. All of us, when we take off the lanyards and we become just plain old residents again. And then there's also, the one to the commercial industrial and bringing in those new folks and how do you drive that forward. And then you have the one to the NGO or the municipality. Or if your customer, like NYPA, if your customer is the municipals and the co-ops, that's a whole different kind of conversation. The main point, I think, and the point that we want to get to is that there's a lot of different opportunities and things are evolving very quickly, but the communication strategy, and being respectful to communicate more often than you think you should, that's the part that's non-negotiable anymore for utilities. We're no longer just opening a bill and paying for it. We're not just ratepayers anymore. So I want to, by way of introduction, you can see everybody's name and company up there now that all are correct. So I don't want to waste our time really going through bios and things like that, but as we talk through the beginning of our topic here, I want each of our panelists to share a little bit about where you're coming from on the topic, and really, what you thought when we said, hey, come do this panel. So I'm going to start with you, Ali, because you're right there. And he's also my chairman of the board, so yay. Ali?
All right, thank you, Bobbi. I hope you guys can hear me. So Ali Mohammed, I'm the Senior Director for Digital Innovation and Transformation Office at NYPA. It's a long title, but I lead our innovation group focused on R&D, clean energy technologies, workforce development, digital workforce, digital transformation, as well as the Agile Lab, which is the Advanced Grid Innovation Lab for Energy, which is being converted from like a lab to like a service offering to all the utilities, the New York ISO, the NYSERDAs of the world, to, in New York to address our 2050 goals as we plan and we strategize for those. On the other hand, I also work on one of the governor's initiative for broadband, which is using NYPA's middle mile infrastructure and addressing rural broadband digital divide, where we are actually conducting a $10 million pilot. So so that's a different side of communications that I have never had that experience working on the customer side and now dealing with our customers and non-customers, like the residents of the towns and villages. So that's definitely one of the interesting areas that I, for the past year, have been working on, and also the chairman of the board for Utility Broadband Alliance. So one thing I would start off with, and I've learned this through the COVID period and working on different things through the past couple of years, is there's no such thing as over communicating. Either you are communicating or you're not communicating enough. And if you don't communicate enough, you'll see a decrease in employee engagement. You'll see a dissatisfaction with your customers. So your experience is down, the customer experience is down, the expectations are down. So that's one thing that I want to start off with, and we'll elaborate more on it throughout the panel. But there's no such thing as over communicating.
Absolutely, absolutely. Jenise, we talked a little bit about this as well. So share with us a little bit about your background and what you're working on with regards and your first opening comments about this.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Jenise Osani. My hair is a little kind of my tiger cut. So my background's kind of interesting. I actually have a bachelor's of fine arts in graphic design, and I spent the first 10 years of my career as a designer, and ended up having this opportunity at OUC to lead their marketing and customer education area, which evolved into leading the e-commerce area after I helped with automating all of our self-service applications. Then we implemented proactive alerts for outages, alerts. And then after my former boss left, after 30 years of utility, I moved into communications in the PR space, as well as the product space. I have a lot of interesting responsibilities along with this new product development, but is it closer or further? Yeah, it's not, it's up, but, okay. It's not me.
Not user error.
There it is. How about now? Okay. What's the last thing you heard? Hi, Jenise, really? Oh, man. All right. Real fast. Degree in fine arts. I was a designer for 10 years, got to OUC, did marketing and customer education, then went into e-commerce, then got into PR and communications and stakeholder engagement, along with the new product development, which, if you think about it, I'm kind of excited because one of the frustrating things as a marketer or advertiser was I would often be brought a product or service to go market, and I'd be given a goal, and I'd say, how did you get this goal? Like, even if I touch every single customer in our service territory and get 20% of them to respond and get 5% of them to convert, we're never going to achieve this goal. How did you do this? So, be careful what you ask for, because now I have to figure that out up front and create the product and service as well as go market and advertise it. But it's, a challenge I'm up to. And, so as part of that, I work on our electrification strategy, our solar strategy, anything that's a non-traditional revenue, which to reach our net zero goals by 2050, there's a lot of change management. And that's something we talked about here before. So it's not just your typical, I'm going to communicate with you. It's more about change management, engaging the people with a lot of high influence, a lot of high interest in a topic, and ensuring you're bringing those people along with you because they can reach way more than just we can. So, we have this thing called high tech, high touch. And the high tech is more of the automated, the digital channels, and the high touch is those one-to-one conversations that Bobbi mentioned.
Absolutely. And so, Cory, you get to bring a perspective from Deloitte, but you've also been doing this for multiple utilities, so a much broader perspective. But talk to us a little bit about your history and what you're looking at.
Sure. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah. Okay. I'm Cory Ritthaler with Deloitte Consulting. I am a partner in our power and utilities customer and marketing practice. And I've been doing work in the customer utility space from a consulting perspective for my entire career. So about 23 years working with various utilities across North America and in Europe. And a lot of what I've done has been focused on helping utilities engage with their customers in the way in which their customers want to be engaged with. I think as especially in recent years, there's been a lot of talk about, omni-channel and meeting the customer where they are, and engaging in a customer through their channel of choice. And, there's a lot of benefits to doing that. When you can meet a customer in the channel of choice or, how they want to be engaged with and communicating with them in a way that's transparent, in a way that is timely and accurate, it builds a lot of things. It builds trust, which I can talk more about. It builds or increases customer satisfaction, and it builds advocacy as well, which is, depending upon the regulatory environment, can be a really important thing to have that, customer advocacy, and that customer communications that are done in a way that educate people on why a utility is investing in certain things, the safety measures that they're taking, what they're doing around grid resiliency. Could go on and on and on, but all of these things come down to important things that our utilities are doing, and then communicating them out to customers in a way in which they clearly understand them.
So clearly we have the right crew up here for this topic. Guys, though, you hit on it just a little bit, Jenise, about the one-to-many, the communicating often, Ali, that you said. So let's talk a little bit about the strategies given some of the new technologies. What are you guys utilizing or hoping to utilize to reach into those audiences? So whether it's the individuals, like all of us in the room, or the governor's office or the municipalities. Let's talk about communication strategies from the new technologies, and how do you integrate that, and how do you know which are going to reach your audiences, which channels? Let's talk about that a bit.
Sure. I mean, starting off with some of the projects that we do with our customers, I mean, you know, pre-COVID, everything was in person. You meet the mayors, you meet the superintendents of the electric divisions in person. But as COVID hit, we had to switch to working from home. Within 5 days, NYPA stood up the work from home policy and had all the IT equipment ready to even, manage the traffic. We never had that in the past as a utility. But one thing that we learned is, making sure our customers understand what's going on within our utility to how we can serve them better, and what are some of the challenges that we are facing that would help them understand what's coming down the pipeline. There might be some outages that we are currently working on. There might be some time that the service is done, but who to contact. We get some hurricanes and some tropical storms here and there, but especially in the Catskills and the Adirondack region is where the biggest impact is. And getting someone out there to fix something, it takes time depending on how bad the weather event is. So like I said, over communicating helps, right? So building that trust takes time. And we have built it over the years, over the past 50, 60, 70, 90 years, but now maintaining it within this new digital era is critical. So, when we moved over to Teams and Zoom, now there's so many platforms out there. Some of them are not tech savvy. They don't have a large crew. They don't have the time to learn all this. So we had to be very nimble to understand what their needs are, what is something that they are comfortable with, and how much information do we give them at what period of times. And I think that was very crucial to keep our customer base happy, ensuring that we are servicing and we're delivering quality service to them. So now I think, and then once you do that, pre-COVID, we had Cisco Jabbers, we had WebEx, we had Zoom, you had Teams, you had all these functions, but then you'll get cost cut pressures too. So I think we all consolidate on Microsoft products. So we are using Teams now. We make sure that our customers also use the same products. So we're aligned with them. So we have proper communication, technology functions and works, and any support that we give from a cybersecurity perspective to ensure that their systems are secure as well is something that our ex-CEO had started, enabling grid resiliency as well as cybersecurity perspective, making sure their networks are stable and secure. Was something that we embarked in during the COVID period.
When it comes to technology, I think about it in a couple of different ways. There's certainly technology based off of our operational systems, whether it's our outage system or whether it's our customer care and billing system, and taking information from those systems and ensuring we're getting to customers information ahead of them even needing it, especially when it comes to outages. So those are highly technical, they're highly interconnected, and they do a lot of the work for us. Now, from time to time, there's variations of that. We have a broadcast alert tool that we use for things if we're going to be changing out your backflow device. We're also a water utility. Or we're going to be doing a planned outage where we are proactively pulling the list of people we know that are going to be impacted and then communicating to them in their channel of choice, whether it's text, email, or a voice call. But then also when it comes to actually my communications team, like the corporate communications team, while they do use that broadcast tool, something we implemented in kind of 2019, 2020, and this might not seem too high tech, is a blog. And we've introduced newer social media channels. Like I had to practically beg, but we're finally on Instagram, and next I'm gonna work on TikTok. But what I have found is if we can create a core piece of content that tends to live on the blog to tell our story, we can then repurpose it as we need it. And sometimes we're asking our legislative affairs person to share that content. Or sometimes we're asking our public relations person who owns our NGO or community-based organization to please go share that. And so we're really trying to just amplify these core stories and through all these different digital channels. Working through a website redesign, which also maybe sounds a little basic, but when we first did our website 12 years ago, it was great. It did everything we needed it to do, but it was highly focused on the residential customer. We're redoing it now, thinking through all of the other users of the website. Just some thoughts.
Well, and those are really good thoughts, because you're right, there are multiple audiences now, and when we built some of that communication, frankly, they didn't want to hear from us about a lot of things. So we gave them what we thought they wanted, certainly. Cory, you work with a lot of utilities and help them build these strategies. Tell us about some of your lessons learned when it comes to, we'll stay on the technology angle for just a little bit,
Sure.
because of those new tools that are available.
Sure. So when it comes to enabling technology and communications, I mean, just about every technology is out there that you could need or want to leverage. But what I would say is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in every channel for every customer journey. I mean, typically when we go and work with a utility, we go and we map out all of the channels. So you got, call center, or a CRM capability for an agent handled call, IVR, web, email, chat, social. I mean, I could keep text. I mean, you can keep going. Lay those across the top, and then across one side, think about all of the customer journeys. And dependent upon your user base, and so highly encourage customer research and some voice of customer mechanisms, we see variability region by region, journey by journey on how customers want to communicate. I have a couple interesting stories. We worked with one utility where they thought enabling capabilities via Alexa was a really good idea, and they went out and we helped them build an ability to pay bill. We developed a few other journeys. I think about 25 customers out of north of 1 million signed up, and only about 8 became active. And it was a bit of a test market, but I use that little funny anecdote to just tell you that another utility we work with actually had much higher success rate, and it was because their customers, due to a variety of different reasons, certain demographics and just propensity to adopt certain certain technologies, were more willing to do that. So it's a kind of a long-winded way to say there's no one size fits all. There's plenty of technology options to communicate with all customers in a way in which they want to be communicated with. But I highly encourage everybody to get that customer research completed, understand the voice of the customer, and it's a continuous cycle. Continue to check in with customers on, hey, we have enabled this new outage communication via text where we give you, estimated restoration times, by the, every hour or whatever it may be. Is that working? Would you like them more frequently? Would you like them continue to engage in your communications? It's a continuous cycle to get it right.
Just want to add one thing to it. I'm sorry. Is when you talk, maybe NYPA had a better success rate with signups. We actually built our customer portal. We did not have one before. Our customers, our municipalities, the New York City transit system, the bills are, millions and billions of dollars, and it's different mechanism. They still get paper copies or PDFs attached. But now with the whole customer portal, that we actually reached out to them before we created the portal. Is what are your requirements for this? And I think getting that feedback first before we started working on the project and putting our functional requirements together helped. They were engaged throughout the process. They gave us constant feedback. Whenever a portion of the portal went live, we constantly got feedback, and now we have, I think, over 80% of the users actually use it, and they come back, use it every month. So now they can pay their bills online. They have a view of all the projects that NYPA is working on with other customers. So now they know if there's an area that they want to be, they're interested in, all they need to do is click a button, connect with the account manager. So there's improvements that we have done over the past few years. But we talked about customer experience, and one thing that I want to talk about is the employee experience as well. there's a lot of technologies. When COVID hit, the first thing that we did was issue an iPhone to every single employee within 15 days because there was no way we could communicate with some of the folks that are in remote locations. It's harder to get a hold of them. But this is between the management and the union. They always have that concern about, hey, the manager's are trying to track us. But there are some that still don't use it. They're not comfortable using it. So there is technology out there, like you mentioned. There's various forms of technologies, but I think the adoption should come from the other side. It's like a cultural change, like you said. Now you're trying to be more virtual and online. So how do you communicate with everyone? So I think just keep that in mind. That there's a technology out there, but we have to adopt it. Everyone should adopt.
So if I could just add on one thing, the people who are doing some of this very, very well are solar companies, are the like Sierra Club, the Clio Institute, a lot of the people who perhaps want to have a say in what your utility is doing. And I think for us, it used to be very back and forth. You say something, I say something. And we're working very hard to create a dialogue with them. But going back to my original point, they can do automated form campaigns and get hundreds, if not thousands, of people to automatically send a letter to your board. They can engage in just the solar companies have Marketo or Salesforce, and they're just constantly hitting people the way a retailer might. So this is what you're competing against when it comes to communications and getting that voice of customer. For me and my team, our vision is to be creating mind share or creating market share. So whatever we're doing, we're trying to make sure that we're in our customer's mind, and when they can choose, they choose us.
Well, and you bring up a good point. We can learn quite a lot from adjacent organizations, adjacent industries, certainly that have gone before the utility space. I started my career too many years ago to talk about, working at a bank. And okay, so I'll tell you this much. It was the 80s, and we got ATMs. And I will never forget a whole summer that we wore T-shirts that said it must be magic in order to teach people how to use an ATM. You've always used an ATM. But for the utility industry, we're going through some similar it must be magic moments. That now everybody banks on their phone. I don't even think I go to an ATM much anymore, much less a branch. So as we're beginning that evolution on the utility space, I think we can learn a lot particularly from the financial services and banking industries, about they had to also over-communicate and in some ways even handhold. Many times going out and stand in front of the ATM with the person and teach them how to press in their PIN number, and yes, it will actually give you cash, and it's your cash and not someone else's. So there's some of that, I think, and I think it goes back a bit to what you were speaking about the demographics of your residents or of your footprint. And Ollie, certainly you cover a much broader footprint at New York Power Authority. So you have to try a bunch of things and then learn from that. But is there also a place, sort of the non-tech piece, the non-tech channel? There are people still getting paper bills. How can we make sure we don't leave those folks as we're making sure we communicate? Because again, it's very passive at that point. You're sending out something into the great unknown. What are some strategies maybe for making sure we're following up and reaching those folks? Have we thought through some of that? For any of you. I don't need to pick on you. You're right beside of me.
Yeah. I know you're just looking at me, so you want my answer first. But different perspective to that question is what I've experienced. And people that live in disadvantaged communities, not a lot of people know about this, but they get a $30 subsidy from FCC on their internet bills. The commercial carriers do not publish that information on their page up front where people can go and sign up. So now with the $100 billion that are coming out to address rural broadband digital divide, one of the requirements from FCC is to have many sign-ups to make sure that people are aware. So the answer for that is, I would say, to start out with digital literacy. The first step that we did was, as the state, this is not NYPA, but one of the agencies within the state reached out to those communities and ask people to sign up. There's people still signing up with paper copies, that's fine for now, but we have programs where we do digital literacy, digital equity training sessions, go in and speak and provide sessions on what are some of the technology changes that are coming down and how can you benefit from it. So I think within the first 3 months, we had 1.3 million customers signed up for the ACP plan. So it's I think it's more about educating. I don't think they know what's out there because not everything is shared openly and publicly, but I think it's time where we say, what is the most critical data, piece of information that we should provide to a customer? It doesn't matter who your customers are. So as long as the information gets there, you will see results.
Excellent. Any other?
So when it comes to reaching people through non-digital channels, what we have found works kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, where who has a lot of interest in a particular segment or who has a lot of influence on that segment. So for example, we have a program in our empowerment zone to provide healthcare through Shepherd's Hope to low-income customers. And so we engaged the faith-based community, and we brought pastors in, and we had lunch, and we told them all about the program as well as our energy efficiency programs. And now they are sharing the message. So it's a matter of finding who can help you share the message. Who do these people trust to get that message from? Another successful way has been either through home builders as people are building homes. Can they get the information to them? Or homeowners association presidents. During COVID, we did virtual homeowners association president meetings, making sure they knew about all of our different programs and products and services that could help people in their community. So for the non-digital channels, it's really, we've leaned into asking people to help us and educating them, because then they can amplify it. And I think, I mentioned it again earlier, is that we're dipping our toe into working with the Sierra Club, the NAACP, the Clio Institute, Puerto Latinx, all the different CBO organizations. And there's other utilities who I'm looking at who I think are doing an amazing job. And we're hoping to emulate that a bit and engage with them, not only to tell, but to listen, and how can we improve? Because they'll then also be the voice to us, because maybe we can't hear from all 400,000 of our customers. So maybe they can help tell us information too.
If you guys have questions, just, raise your hand and scream, okay? Because we don't want, wave. We don't want to leave you guys out. It's not just a one-way communication here either, y'all. I want to switch gears a little bit. You hit on a little bit, Ali, and even Jenise, about internal communications. So we don't want to forget our internal employee stakeholders. And pre- and post-COVID internal comms. Let's talk a little bit about that. Sharing phones, sending out phones to everybody, that's pretty ingenious. That's no small dollar figure right there, though. But, what else did we have to do as we sent everybody home? How did we have to move forward with that? Anybody jump right in and kick us off on this internal comms conversation?
I can try. So COVID, internal COVID communications, and it nearly broke me. It was a lot of work at first, like 80 hours a week trying to figure out the policies, how to communicate them. HR and I became best friends. And so there was just a lot of communication. But with all these policies, it was important to get it to the leaders, get it to the supervisors, get it to the people who could make sure they're talking to their individual employees and talk to them about it. So that was either through email, or we would have supervisor level WebExes, or any way we could to get those leaders engaged. There's some departments that are smaller, like mine. It's pretty easy for me to do, but it's really hard in ops. So we had to give them the tools to connect and get the information to their employees. And, I feel like, though, that's a practice that we've carried through. We do a lot more of that now. We've found that is very helpful to get just any kind of communication out. And I think COVID taught us that lesson.
The only thing I would add is a lot of the same things I said about customers in terms of wanting to engage and channel a choice applies to employees as well. During COVID, I've seen statistics, and I can't remember off the top of my head, about the volume of email that increased. And so many companies used email as their primary communication channel. And employees just got flooded, quite frankly, with information. And some would probably argue, and some organizations still do. And so I worked with a few utilities that got creative and thought about communication strategies similarly to how they thought about their external customers. And I saw some create little podcasts or mini videos that were a few minutes getting a message out, creating other things that would go up on like a video message board as opposed to just pummeling people over and over and over with email. I know in our own organization I've felt pummeled with email myself, and then it was kind of a trigger to remind clients that you invest so heavily in all these technologies to engage with customers across multiple channels. Think about it for your employees as well. And I'd say that COVID aside, or we're long beyond it, I would encourage people to still think that way.
TV monitors were another thing for us. During COVID, we got more and more requests for monitors throughout the commission. And what's great about the monitors is you can put up a very brief message, like, go check your email for new updates on this, or this. You're just teasing them enough, they see it there, and then they do go to the channel where all of the information is. And just like we have an external blog, we have an internal blog, and a lot of our internal employees will go there.
So from an NYPA perspective, pretty much similar to what you have done, but we had to take a look from two different angles. One's the employees that are within the corporate office that are working from home, but there are folks that are sequestered on site for weeks. So once you are tested negative and you're working on site, you're there for 3 to 4 weeks. You have no communication outside with the outside world. So we had to put in access points everywhere to make sure that they can communicate with their family members. They're sacrificing to be out there to ensure keeping the lights on. So what we did was initially we started sending out emails first every day to the managers, what's happening, what's going on. Every week there was a weekly summary that goes on to say what has happened and what should we be looking for the next week, so the managers can communicate to their direct reports and vice versa. Now, after that, every 2 weeks, there will be a senior staff meeting. Anybody directors and above. They broke the boundary out, whether you're VP and above, they went all the way to the directors and said, we will meet for 15 to 20 minutes or half hour, or how much time we need every other week, so the CEO can provide an update on where we are. Operations can provide an update on any impacts that happen at the site. So everyone was aware. It was full transparency all the way from top down. And then every month, once a month, we will have an all-hands meeting. The entire company is on, so it's validating what the CEO's message is from the all-hands, is what they have been listening for the past month from your managers too. There's a full transparency going on there. So I think that helped building that trust. The people working together, willing to be out there for weeks. There were instances where someone had their birthday while they were still sequestered. So we arranged a cake to the facility and made sure they had an ability to do FaceTime with their kids and with their families. So it's doing these little things help to build that trust, and then after that we have seen the employee engagement has gone up tremendously. Change management was the biggest thing that we have done, where they came in and helped us draft every single email and messaging out there. We sent out messages through and reminders through text messages, emails, push notifications. It was, like I said, over communicating, but it made sure that everyone understood and heard what was going on.
Absolutely. Well, and you mentioned an important word, that trust factor. So we've been talking a lot about pushing, information out. But Cory, I know we talked a little bit about some of the social listening and listening back, the responses. Talk to us a little bit about becoming that trusted voice and how that kind of active social listening comes into play.
Sure. And just a little bit of tee up to this. I would say weekly, maybe not quite weekly, but I mean, even this morning, I get asked the question, how do you improve your JD Power scores? And I don't know about anybody in the room, but if anybody's cracked the nut on the silver bullet on that, let's talk, because I don't know that anybody has. But so at Deloitte, we've done extensive research on How do you increase customer satisfaction? And and you've heard the word mentioned up here. It comes down to trust. When you build trust with your customers, and I kind of mentioned it as part of my intro as well, customers are more likely to, or have a higher propensity to buy from you. And I know in the regulated utility space, it's a little different, but it could be buying additional products and services from your utility. It increases advocacy. And, I had a thought earlier, I forget where it was talked about, communicating in non-digital ways. Some of your customers that do engage with you digitally are some of your best mechanisms to communicate to those who don't. Them being advocates for you is a really a big thing. But also it just generally does increase customer satisfaction. And I won't bore everyone with we actually do have a proprietary or patented model called the Trust ID, but I'll speak just a little bit about what it's anchored into, because I think there are some key messages that are important. One is about transparency. So when you think about communication, being transparent with your customer is critically important. Transparent about what makes up their bill. Transparent about why you have a planned shut-off. Incredibly important. Another element or anchor is humanity. Your customers want to know that you're invested in things like climate crisis, invested in in renewable energy, and so on and so forth. And so being human about being involved in the community is another thing to communicate out. A third pillar is what we call reliability. Communicate out to your customers what you're doing to invest in the grid to make it more reliable. I could go on that point for a long time, but in the interest of time, I see we've got less than 10 minutes on. And last but not least, capability. Let your customers know the way in which they can engage with you. Make it clear to them that they have options from a preferences perspective to pay their bill online, pay their bill, in some utilities have enabled it via text. Make it very clear what capabilities you have in the way that they can engage with you, and that will also build trust.
Can I follow up on that? Because that was great. And actually everything you said is how to bring up your JD Power scores, because we track it in my area. It is something we track, and you can do a rate increase, and as long as you're communicating the why and you're being human about it, customers will not take down their satisfaction with you. In fact, it can go up. During COVID, we did a Here With You campaign. It was expressing we're here with you, we're your hometown utility, here are all the things we're trying to do to help. And I'm sure a lot of you went through this in the last year, all the different fuel rate increases. And typically with the rate increase, it's like, here's ways you can lower your bill, here's ways to save. But by the time we were going for our third, I was like, that is not gonna work. That is not gonna resonate. Like, we have got to figure out a way to show empathy for what our customers are going through. And we ended up doing a campaign called Partnering Together, and we actually worked with different community organizations and promoted their utility bill assistance programs, or their their food banks. And really we're trying to show, like, we understand this is hard, and here's everything we're doing to try to help you. So I think you're great, and we actually came out number 1, Wave 1, residential electric. So I'm kind of hoping we did get most trusted brand through Escalent, but we haven't gotten JD Power yet. This is the year.
Everything Jenise and Cory said. I would say use ChatGPT. Maybe it'll give you better answers, right?
True. Rob, you got a question?
Yeah, I'll try to speak loud so everybody can hear, but we've got the federal legislation between BIL and IRA. Uncle Bill and Uncle Ira have come to town now, and there's a lot of available tax incentives, grants, and even loans for commercial enterprises, industrial manufacturers, and even consumers. So there's not a lot of great communication out there in the market about the availability of these funds and how do you get to them. So to what extent is this an opportunity for utilities, going back to the discussion around trust, to become a trusted source to help consumers, manufacturers, and businesses kind of clarify what's available to them and should they go after it? Is that an opportunity?
Can I do a sales pitch right
Yes, do
now?
it, do it.
If you're not a member of Utility Broadband Alliance and you're looking for funding with telecommunications, please join us today.
Thank you very much.
So we will have a resource tool that will on a web page that we talked about is going to show all the available opportunities there. So whether it's the IIJA, the NTIA through NTIA or Capital Projects Fund, whatever is available today, we'll have that. But that aside, we know what we can provide to our customers. We know the ability that we have today or the skill sets that we have today. How can we make our customers be successful? Our teams constantly work with the customers trying to understand what the needs are. And we have a IIJA task force that's called monthly that we track how many applications are being submitted as NYPA as a primary or even as a participant through a paper, for a grant application. And then we identify opportunities where we can partner with our customers, the municipalities and the co-ops, where they would benefit at the end. There might be a piece of technology where we can partner with them to pilot in their locality, or there might be opportunity with all the funding that's out there. We're also looking from a different angle is, are there any opportunities for our customers to actually get the money directly and NYPA can help with the application process, or look at ways that we can help them with the implementation of it. So there is a conversation going on there, and I know the deadlines are very short, and there's applications due within like 60 days or even 45 days, and the municipalities don't have the manpower to reach those goals. So we are helping them out as we speak.
I'm on. Robbie, that's a really good question, and we joke about UBBA, but we talk about that all the time because there is a lot of confusion, and you hear it on the news, but then you only hear the 60 seconds, and then you never hear the how do you go get it, who do you call, what do you do. It's really confusing. It's confusing for small businesses. It's confusing for the municipalities, certainly, and for the individuals now that with the new IRA funds, those tax deductions, how do we make sure that message gets out there? Because that is important, and it is part of what we speak, because it could take some of the burden off. Thank you for that. Any other questions from the audience burning at the moment? Oh, I see you now. No? Okay.
I can add on
Yeah.
to the grants a little bit,
Yeah.
not necessarily quite answering your question, but maybe a heads up for everybody. If we are just getting our heads around grants at OUC, we're actually working with Deloitte, plug for you guys, to help us with our grant management plan. And I literally did not realize until December the amount of work to go for some of these dollars for the communications and the community engagement team. I mean, you have to get letters of support going into the grant application, and then if you're awarded it, you have to have letters of support from the communities that you're going into, which means a lot of engagement with those stakeholders, which again goes back to how can you do that efficiently and effectively? Because say we win 3 or 4 of these grants, that's 3 or 4 ways I have to engage with these communities, engage with the customers that are impacted, and how can I possibly do that with my current staff? So we're trying to figure that out right now. So it's kind of a big deal. So when we figure it out, maybe we'll help others figure it out. Because I'm still working through it for OUC.
And we have to rely on staff, external staff, So, yes, what if you win all of them? That's one question that we all constantly ask ourselves is, we are putting all these applications in. What if we win all of them? Then what? We have to deliver on those. Do we have the staff in-house? Do we have the skill sets in-house? So we are looking at creating strategic partnerships where we might get help from outside. So that's definitely one of the biggest challenges, I think, with all these applications that everyone's submitting to is, do we have the resources?
Okay. About a minute and a half to go. Oh, we have one. Thank you.
At OUC, we have something called the Preferred Contractor Network. So we do actually go out and through a process pick contractors that we say, okay, these are preferred by OUC, and they're allowed to use our logo, our marketing with us and promote themselves as an OUC preferred contractor. So it's electricians, it's plumbers, solar vendors, the people that, we feel like we have vetted and we trust, and they can go out at those moments of panic. And then some of them also then offer point of sale rebates. So instead of the customer having to come to OUC and apply, they take it off and we do a batch process with them every month.
All right, so then just final gazing into the crystal ball, because, we have to have that as the final close. What are you seeing coming down? If you were in charge of the world, king or queen for the day, and you were going to go communicate, what would be the ultimate? What would be the thing you think's coming next that we need to make sure we're ready for? Any thoughts on that? Crystal ballness?
I'll pick the crystal ball first. I would say, and this goes back to one of the conversation I had yesterday on Gen Z, and the generation gap between the X's, the millennials, and Gen Z. Technology is evolving. We are using Teams today. You might be using Metaverse tomorrow. Who knows? So technology is evolving. I think there has to be a lot of education and the cultural, the change management aspect that needs to constantly keep on going. Innovation is at a rapid pace now. So we need to keep up with the trends. We need to keep up with what the technology advancements are. So I think I would close with that and say, hey, if Mark Zuckerberg can figure out Metaverse in 5 years, then we'll probably be in a conference room wearing our headsets, not physically in Austin.
That's right. That's right. Final comment? Go ahead.
I mentioned this earlier. Well, first of all, we don't know, right, how things are going to evolve. But I made mention earlier about the importance of a robust voice of customer program and continuous improvement. I would say capability that's tied to it, right? Like I know I've seen many utilities gather voice of customer feedback, but then don't really have a mechanism for it to easily funnel into something that's actionable. So I worked with one utility where they went and they asked for funding for a continuous improvement group where their work was driven by all of the voice of the customer insights. So they actually got funding in advance. They then went off and executed upon new communication strategies or building out new channels. Solely based on the inputs that came in. I know not everyone can do that, but just think about that concept as you think towards the future, because things are going to continue to evolve over and over and over. To Ollie's point, might be the metaverse, might be other other new technologies that people want to engage with, and just be prepared to adapt and pivot and respond to your customers' wants and needs.
That explains a recent reorg with continuous improvement.
That's right. Any final comments, Jenise?
Well, I was going to say you've really got to figure out a way to listen to your customer and have a dialogue with them, and change management is part of that. And I think the reason why change management is so important to me, I'm ProSci certified in change management. I highly recommend it for any communicator, is because we've spent like the last 30 years letting customers think what we do is easy. They flip a switch and they just think it happens. And, OUC, we're known as the reliable one. That is our tagline. And so now as we go into this new distributed world and people want everything to be solar overnight, there's a lot of education to do. And that's hard when we've made it look so easy. So like one of my favorite lines from Mad Men is, if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation, right? So when solar... It's a sunshine state. Why can't we just do solar? We change it to we're the partly cloudy state. We have 266 days of cloud cover. And so you've just got to do all of this education. And I always say, I'm like, this is our own fault, though. We positioned ourselves on being reliable, which is great, and we should be. But that's what customers have grown to expect. So it's this and both thing I think you've been hearing through the conference the whole time.
And I told you, it must be magic. There you go. Well, help me thank our panelists today. We're all out of time.